Today on History's Tech, we are continuing our look at different classes of ships, and our next vessel will be the fast, maneuverable, long-endurance warship known as the Destroyer. Now, this ship's origins are rather unique, and it really didn't come into its own until the Second World War. However, since then, it has really shown its value. But let's go ahead and take a look at the Destroyer. Now, the origins of the Destroyer actually start with the torpedo. More to the point, the development of the self-propelled torpedo in the 1860s. Now, this was a new weapon system that allowed navies to aim at ships from a distance. And while it was kind of seen as a novelty at first, it really showed its worth as we got to the later 1800s and the development of a new type of ship specifically designed to launch them, known as the torpedo boat. Now, the earliest models of the torpedo boats basically just dropped the torpedoes off the side and then propelled it that way. Later designs actually operated a steam-powered launcher inside of a tube, similar to what we would see nowadays. Now, while these early torpedo boats could pack a punch, they lacked the speed necessary to be really a tactical vessel. Now, as time progressed, we get to other ships such as the Japanese Kodaca, which is kind of the forerunner of what will become the torpedo boat destroyer, which is this all-around, quicker, faster torpedo boat. Now, these early torpedo boats were eventually replaced by torpedo gunboats, and these basically combine the purpose of hunting and destroying torpedoes with the usage of both medium caliber weapons and torpedoes in one package. They were basically a small cruiser in terms of armament, and they were designed to go after smaller boats, not necessarily larger boats, but much smaller. They too couldn't really go up against everything, and this is what eventually leads to what's known as the torpedo boat destroyer. Now, the torpedo boat destroyer is literally the precursor to the destroyer. They're eventually going to drop the phrase torpedo boat and just call them destroyers. And the earliest of these are going to be like this, the Daring and Havoc class built by the Royal Navy. Now, these two ships were built basically as part of a design competition. Admiral at the time, Rear Admiral John Fisher, did not like that the gunboats being used lacked range and speed, and there was a need for a new type of ship. And what he wanted was a new type of ship that would use the new water tube boiler system for better speed and quick firing small caliber guns. So he circulates that he wants 6 ships built and basically has them built of different designs in order to test which will work the best. Now, because of the success of these designs, the British go ahead and okay the development of a turbine-powered destroyer known as the HMS Viper, and this gets them the speed they were wanting. They could get 34 knots, and mind you, this is in 1899. This is an unheard of speed for a warship. Now, not to be outdone at this point, the French and the United States will both start developing their own destroyer classes. The French with the Durandal class, and the United States with their prototype ship, the USS Bainbridge. And it's at this point the ship's development across multiple navies really begins to take off for the next several years, as they begin improvements to the boilers, the overall hull design, the weaponry the ship is going to be equipped with. And here's where we see the name change really happen. And it's here at this point that we really see the name change start to take place. Sometime before we get to World War I, the name motor torpedo is dropped from before destroyer, and they are strictly called destroyers. And instead, a torpedo boat becomes a motor torpedo boat as a new class of ship, which I will talk about in the future. We'll also see that the doctrine for the deployment of these destroyers changed during this time place. It goes from being designed to protect against other torpedo boats to more of a multi-purpose, fast response vessel that could basically protect the fleet itself and also be used to engage enemy in kind of a harassing purpose. And this really kind of gets demonstrated during the Russo-Japanese War, where we'll actually see 3 destroyer divisions attack the Russian fleet in port at Port Arthur. And while they managed to fire 18 torpedoes, they do limited damage, but it shows that it is possible. And as we get into World War I, we really don't see any engagement with any capital ships with these vessels. However, we do see them take on other ships of similar size, and we see them in small skirmishes. Until we get to the Battle of Jutland, when 80 British destroyers and 60 German torpedo boats basically go head to head. But it's here that the development of the destroyer is going to have to take a massive leap due to the new German weapon, the U boat. Now, early in the war, the destroyers were basically the only thing that could intercept a submarine in enough time before it submerged, either by gunfire or by ramming it. However, they needed something else. So the plan was made to improve the destroyer. They strengthened the bows for ramming. They added depth charge hydrophones to allow them to identify the targets, thus transitioning the destroyer from a torpedo boat to this kind of multi-role vessel to now adding anti-submarine duties to it. Now, towards the end of the war, a lot of the navies had started to really beef up their destroyers, and this kind of stalled out with the creation of the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited a lot of those arms developments. However, the destroyer was one of the few ships that really wasn't as heavily regulated in the beginning, so a lot of navies went ahead and started to develop new destroyer classes. The British, the Americans, the Japanese all went into developing a new, better designed destroyer. And while they couldn't build all of them, they went ahead and designed these ships and tested out certain aspects on prototypes. So by the time we got to World War II, we had an even better designed ship. And once again, they had to make another leap in technology. Submarines were much more effective. Aircraft had become an important weapon in naval weapons development. So now they had to have light anti-aircraft capabilities. They needed radar. They needed the ability to launch ASWs, otherwise known as anti-submarine weapons. They started packing them with dual-purpose guns. And so now the destroyer, which was supposed to be this small little ship, has gone to being a powerhouse of firepower during World War II. And it becomes a main vessel for a lot of navies during the Second World War. And we even see variants of destroyers appearing: destroyer mine layers, anti-mine layers, anti-submarine, anti-aircraft versions that are specifically built for a particular purpose. And because they were building so many destroyers towards the end of the war, even after the war ended, they kind of went ahead and allowed several of them to keep being built because they were already available. These ships, such as the British Daring class, the United States Forrest Sherman class, or the Soviet Kotland class, were holdovers from the 1940s into the 1950s, but they were actually much bigger than their original ships that were being built at the time, and they had new, much more up-to-date machinery. They had automatic main guns. They had radar, sonar, anti-submarine weapons already built in, and so they were kind of allowed to go into that introductory line of service. And it's here that we see probably one of the more recent major changes to the destroyer, and that's due to the development of the surface-to-air missile and the surface-to-surface missile. And we see the development of what's known as a guided missile destroyer. And these are destroyers that can carry a wide variety of missile types for all kind of mission scenarios. They can be anti-air, they can be anti-ship, they can fire long-range cruise missiles, allowing them to continue their versatility and flexibility that made them popular at the start of the 20th century. Now, because of this versatility, the destroyer's not going anywhere anytime soon. Unlike other ships that a lot of navies have started to get rid of, like the cruisers and battleships and things like that, we are still seeing the destroyer being deployed. They may not always be called destroyers. Sometimes some navies call them frigates, but they are destroyers. And at present, we are seeing what the potential future of destroyers will be. The United States did develop their revolutionary design of the Zumwalt-class destroyer. And while that design didn't work out as planned, the United States is developing its next generation destroyer, the DDGX, along with another 12 nations, all looking into the future of destroyer development. And what that may hold, we don't know. We will see more than likely new gun systems, new missile capabilities. The usage of hypersonic weapons and even laser-based weapons may be in our future. So the destroyer is the future of a lot of navies because of that. But there you go, our look at the destroyer, a ship that did not start off even remotely what it is today. Even 100 years ago, it's not even the same type of ship. And it has gone through a lot of changes throughout its history. But that's it for today. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.